Have you ever gone skydiving? Or maybe you just imagined it. Picture this, halfway down, heart pounding, adrenaline rushing, and then you suddenly realize, I don't want to do this anymore. That feeling of free fall was precisely how I felt becoming a medical doctor and opening a multi-million-dollar medical center 2 years after residency. I had spent years preparing for this leap, but halfway down, I realized I made a terrible mistake. But just like skydiving, it was too late to go back. I remember the day I received my acceptance letter into a Caribbean medical school. I was in my parents' home, holding that letter, shaking. I was elated. Becoming a doctor had been a childhood dream of mine, something I've worked for tirelessly for years, and something my family expected of me. I quickly ran to my room, flung open my suitcase, and started packing immediately. Now, each item I packed wasn't just a piece of clothing. Rather, they represented the life I wanted to live, away from the bubble of my studies and my conservative upbringing. One of the first items I packed was my brand new bathing suit, and it still smelled like chlorine from the swimming lessons I had taken that summer, because I was determined not to go to a tropical island without knowing how to swim. The next thing I packed was my favorite black cocktail dress, which still had its tags on, and a pair of hot leather stilettos, which made me feel like I owned the room. Now, these shoes were not just heels, they represented confidence. I love to dance, especially when you mix African beats, calypso, or salsa. I was ready to live the life of my dreams, go to parties and enjoy life, one song, one dance at a time. But somewhere along the way, the music stopped. Years later, I was no longer the excited young doctor ready to save the world. The novelty of practicing medicine had worn thin. I remember one warm spring day, the sun was shining, but inside I felt dark and empty. I was exhausted. I went to one of the exam rooms in my medical center, shut the door, and started banging my head against the table in frustration. I was exhausted. I was burnt out. I felt like there was a weight on my shoulders and there was a ball and chain around my ankle, and they had thrown away the keys. I asked myself, how could I, a woman with so much to give and so many talents, live life like this? You see, the laughter was gone, the music was gone, the dance was gone. It was like life had thrown me lemons and I forgot to make lemonade, leaving behind only bitterness. And it was in my journey I realized that I had to make a decision. I either accept a life of misery or I fight. I chose to fight with the way I knew how, and that was through seeking knowledge and exploring why I felt this way. Now, in my journey, I came across perhaps a bold realization. Perhaps we need to redefine burnout, and it's not what they've been telling you. Burnout is not just a work problem. Burnout is an invitation to look deeper and ask yourself questions that you may never have known you had. Has anyone here ever experienced burnout or know anybody who's burnt out? Yeah, many of you. In my journey, I realized I was not alone. Burnout had become an epidemic that has impacted multiple industries, including healthcare. The World Health Organization in 2019 officially recognized burnout as an occupational phenomenon characterized by chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. In healthcare, burnout had reached a critical point. In 2022, in the Journal of the American Medical Association, they reported that 63% of physicians reported burnout, a significant increase from previous years. And in literature, burnout has been described as something called a burnout triad, which consists of 3 components: emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and a decreased sense of personal accomplishments. Though I recognize these components as being present in burnout, I feel they are only symptoms and don't look at burnout in a holistic way, which is trying to find the root cause. But one thing I do agree, that burnout has been normalized across society, and we can't afford to normalize it any longer. Burnout is more than just never-ending to-do lists, unrealistic expectations. The standard advice of exercise, do yoga, relax, eat healthy, seemed like just a checklist. And as a busy mother of 2 young children, still in diapers then, I didn't need another checklist. And it was in my journey I discovered that burnout is not a work problem. Burnout is a relationship problem. A problem rooted in a relationship with ourselves, our significant others, and the world and society. And when these relationships are strained, unhealthy, or unbalanced, burnout thrives. As Brené Brown beautifully says, quote, "We are biologically, cognitively, physically, and spiritually wired to love, to be loved, and to belong," end of quote. And when these relationships no longer serve us, they can be a significant source of stress and lead to frustration and burnout. And the strain of relationship discord can impact every aspect of our lives, creating a ripple effect, impacting our mental health, emotional stability, and physical well-being. In dysfunctional relationships, the lack of emotional support and understanding can exacerbate feelings of loneliness and frustration, leading to the cycle of exhaustion and disconnection. This impacts how we show up in life and in the workplace. In 2023, the Harvard Study of Adult Development, a longitudinal study following individuals for over 80 years, reinforced something crucial. It is not wealth, fame, or career success that leads to a long, happy life. Rather, it is the quality of our relationships. Close relationships protect us from life's discontents and help delay the mental and physical decline. And they are better predictors of a long, happy life than social class, intelligence, or even genes. So the question I ask today, if we recognize relationships are vital, why aren't we studying burnout in the context of our relationships? So I continued to study. And then I looked at the current burnout triad, which consisted of 3 symptoms. And I switched it up and instead added those 3 critical relationships like I mentioned: our relationship with ourselves, our relationship with significant other, and work and society. Because all 3 are vital to support our overall well-being. And like a stool needs at least 3 legs to support itself, when either one's leg is weak or broken, that stool could fall. Likewise, our lives need these 3 critical relationships to support ourselves: the relationship with ourselves, the relationship with significant other, and work and society. And when even one of these relationships is damaged or strained, burnout occurs. So I continued digging, and I had to look at myself and look at my critical relationships. The first one, perhaps the most important one, is the relationship we have with ourselves. And this includes our past experiences, our beliefs, our self-worth, and our identity. For me growing up, I was raised to believe that I must work 10 times harder than my peers in order to be considered good enough. And my sense of worth was attached to my accomplishments. So it's no surprise I burnt out. So I encourage you, look at the narrative in your life. Look at your beliefs. Are they holding you back, or are they pushing you forward? Second relationship is the relationship with your significant other, whether spouse, partner, or close confidant. The people closest to us have a great influence on our lives. And I know from personal experience, and I'm sure you can attest to this too, if things aren't so great at home, you're not going to show up to work as the best version of yourselves. At the time of my peak burnout, my relationship with my significant other was on life support. And it wasn't just because of the physical distance separating ourselves, but also the emotional disconnection. So I encourage you to ask those sometimes uncomfortable yet powerful questions. Are you talking with each other with compassion? Is there open communication? Do you find yourself arguing over the same things over and over again? Are there healthy boundaries? And the list could go on. And then the third relationship is your relationship with work and society. And like I mentioned, to support our well-being, we need all three relationships to be strong. So this includes your work and your connection to the larger world. In my world, my relationship with work had become toxic because I was trying to fix systemic challenges in healthcare that were well beyond my control. And my decision to close my medical center, though terrifying, was one of my most liberating acts. And sometimes the greatest act of self-care is knowing when to let go. So I encourage you to examine your relationships and take action. Now, action is only part of the equation. Life, like a good cocktail, requires balance. Too much bitterness can make it hard to enjoy, but just the right mix can be uplifting. So I'd like you to pause for a minute today. Place your hand on your heart. Take a deep breath and ask yourself, am I living the life I want to live? How do I want my relationships to look and feel like? And when you leave from here, I encourage you to get 3 pieces of paper and write down the vision for your life so that your relationships can align with your life and the experiences you want to have. Now remember, burnout is not a sign of failure. It is an invitation to look deeply and realign your relationships with your priorities. And in closing today, when life throws you lemons, don't just make lemonade, make cocktails. Cheers.